Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for the first webinar in Spec Innovation's special summer series on how to use Innoslate. Michael Campbell will be leading today's webinar on how to use Innoslate for beginners. This is a great webinar for those who are new to Innoslate, or the model-based systems engineering methodology, or just want to go over the basics. My name is Elizabeth Steiner. I'm the Communications Director here at Spec Innovations, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, let's go over some quick housekeeping. During the presentation, feel free to send us questions, and we will get them answered in the workshop part of the webinar. You can also interact with us on LinkedIn through the Innoslate user group or through Twitter using the handle @Innoslate. The webinar is being recorded, and we will make it available to you after the live presentation, so be sure to keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now, I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Mike Campbell. He'll be sharing with you how to get started with Innoslate. Mike Campbell is a risk analyst and systems engineer here at Spec Innovations. Mike has 11 years of work experience performing risk assessment, risk management, cost-benefit analysis, and organizational functional analysis tasks. And now I will hand over the controls to Mike, and we will get started.
Hello, folks. I just wanted to say hi. My name is Mike Campbell. I will be going over our agenda here. Basically, what we're going to be looking at is getting started with Innoslate, how we've made it very easy. I will also look at our dashboards. Basically, the dashboards are kind of what we use to start you on your path down Innoslate and being able to create your projects and move forward with the tool itself with an easy help remedy of the dashboards themselves. I will talk to you a little bit about the language of Innoslate and why we use it, and I will also talk about the toolbar and why I feel it's the lifeblood of the tool and how it is extremely important to Innoslate and your projects. And then we'll go into a live demonstration, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So first of all, getting started with Innoslate, obviously most of you here may or may not have an account, but if you do have an account, you're just going to log in. You're going to enter your email address and your password, and then you hit log in, and it will bring you into your first project if you haven't already started one. If you have started one, it should bring you into the most recent project you were with, but you'll be viewing most likely a dashboard, and that dashboard can take you to a lot of different places. We designed it that way to help you get started and to get you moving into Innoslate instead of starting with just a blank canvas. So ideally, the dashboard will get you moving, so it's your path, your choice. You can either start importing data or you can start adding new data to your database. There are many choices within the dashboard. Innoslate has many aids to guide the user in getting started. You can import your own work or start new, like I said before. The dashboard does have examples for most of the lifecycle to upload and play with. So we've uploaded some samples to be able to play with it and see what Innoslate uses, how it uses it, and how it functions as a full lifecycle tool. So starting with full lifecycle development, again, we have options within the dashboard that show you how to go through requirements analysis and management, physical modeling, functional analysis, architecture, verification and validation, and operations and support. You can select all of these from the dashboard, and there are actual examples that we have built into the database to upload and show, so you don't have to just start from scratch. You can actually see how the database is populated and how diagrams are formed, relationships are formed within Innoslate using one of our examples here. For modeling languages, there are two well-known model languages that are in the community. We know System L and UML. Of course, there are some others that have been out there, but right now there's System L and UML that are the well-known ones. But these are complex languages for complex systems. Have you heard of LML? LML is the lifecycle modeling language, and it's a simple language for complex systems. It's extendable, it's customizable, and it's an open standard. And for more information about lifecycle modeling language, you can go to lifecyclemodeling.org. There's plenty of information there, and this has become an open standard in 2013, and Innoslate has adopted this and is the only tool that is using LML. So I will go into a little bit of the schema and how it's used in Innoslate when we do the live demonstration. The toolbar, this is what I explained before, which is the lifeblood of the tool, at least for me anyway. I always feel like if I can't find what I'm looking for, I'll go to the toolbar and it's pretty much accessible right there. So what can I do with it? Well, I can access any projects, I can share them, I can upgrade my plan if I wanted to go from a basic version of Innoslate into the professional plan. I can do that for the cloud version. I can access my chat if I notice someone else is actually on the tool themselves. I can chat with them and talk about a project in real time. I can access my projects and actually archive any projects that I want, so they're not showing up in my actual project list, which can be a little annoying as I'm looking over a large project list. But thankfully, we have given the option to archive projects, so now I can reduce that list and be able to find the ones that I want. I can search my database. I can access requirements view. I can view my database. I can view the dashboard. I can add and remove any buttons that are listed up there on the toolbar, and I can access many features with the menu drop-down, which is located in the upper left-hand corner. And I will show that to you as we get into the live demonstration. But to me, this is the lifeblood of the tool. This is how, once I'm past the dashboard, this is how I pretty much access just about anything that I need. So let's go into a live demonstration here. Okay, so as we're looking at Innoslate, I've already logged in myself, and this is the actual dashboard you're going to be looking at. It's very basic. Nothing has been done to this project, so therefore I know that I'm starting fresh and new. What you see on the front of the dashboard, basically if anything had been done to the database, it would be listed here. If there's any statistics that need to be shown, there's usually a sunburst chart that will show those statistics, so it basically shows me entities that are within the database, what kind of entities they are, and how they're populated. We also have this model maturity. Basically, it shows me how well relationships are done within the model itself, and I can actually update that just by clicking on Run Now, and it'll give me a percentage score based on the model and how the model is related to other, or how entities are related to each other within the models. I can also take feedback or enter feedback here if I wanted to give our developers an idea of what I would want to see in the tool. And it's a great way to know what our customers are looking for as well in the tool, so we can make future changes, schedule future changes, and see what people are asking for. So those things are very important, and of course this is very customizable. I can go up here to settings and I can change pretty much anything I want. Just grab this and throw it over here, and if I wanted 3 columns, I can do that. And now you can see it's been changed. So that's pretty much one way. So in order to get started in this, I want to look at what my primary area of interest is going to be. So as I look at these, this is what I was talking about before with the full life cycle. I have architecture, functional analysis, full life cycle management, operations support, basically everything that I want to see here as part of the full life cycle. So if I wanted to go somewhere, that's pretty much where I'd want to go. So I'm going to try and actually import my own data since I know what I want to do with this. So again, the menu button up on the toolbar, I think it's very important to this tool. The menu button brings me down to a lot of different options here. Now over here on the right where I'm highlighting, I can pin these to my toolbar if I wanted to. So if I wanted to take the dashboard off, I just click that and the dashboard goes away. And if I wanted to add the Schema Editor, click the plus button, there it is. So I'm going to go over to Import Analyzer because I'm going to bring in a document. Okay, I have 4 options to choose from here. I have the Microsoft Word version, I have an Innoslate export, which is a .xml, in case someone wanted to share a project with me. I have Microsoft Excel, it has to be a .csv file, or I have a Rational Doors file, which is a .csv as well. The beauty of this is that I can copy and paste into our importer here, and the tool will actually read the language and identify it and give you an example before you actually save it into the database, and I'll show you that here right now. So enter the name for the new document artifact. We're going to call this since I already have it labeled out, and select the class I'd like to use. This is a drop-down, so I can just do that. And we have all of our classes listed here. I'm going to make these requirements. And I know the pattern is going to be like this. So I come up here and hit next. Now here's where I want to enter the information. So I'm going to paste anything, all of the document here, as long as it's in a good format. So this is my document. It might take a minute here to open up. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so here's the document. And so if I just wanted to copy that in, and for some reason, there we go. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Just take a quick look at it. It looks pretty good. So I should be able to get that into the database. So I'm going to click next. I'm sorry, my computer's acting a little slow at the moment. Okay, so here's the preview. It shows you basically the class. Since the document was an artifact, it brought it in as an artifact, and these are all the requirements that are listed. The numbers are listed here, and you can see it did a pretty good job of it. And it gave me the name of the actual statement or requirement or description, and here's the full description itself. So it did a pretty good job of that. I like what I see, so I'm going to actually save that. And it'll bring it into requirements view in the database. I can't remember. I think this document was fairly large, so that's why it's probably taking a long time. Usually it doesn't take this long. There we go. So these are the requirements brought in through the import analyzer, and you can see that they're staggered a bit on the left-hand side. That just means that these are now children of a parent in a relationship, and that's identified here. So E2.3, E2.3.1. Basically, since this is requirements view, I can look at a rationale of to why this should be a requirement. We do have a quality score over here, and at the moment there are no labels that I've added to this, although I can do that for future reference if I need to when I start sorting these out. If I wanted to find out how good these requirements are, all I have to do is run the quality check. And these are not good requirements at all. There we go. So as you can see, the scores changed once the quality checker was done. You can see what makes a good requirement and what makes one not a requirement at all. Ideally, it's probably just the language, so this would just be more of a statement than it would be a requirement. Okay, so now that we've got this imported and we're looking at requirements view, I can, if I want to edit anything within requirements view here, so if I just click on the requirement, I can now start changing the description. I can change the name if I'm not happy with that. I can change the number if I'm not happy with that. I can bring in or create a table. I can change anything within here just like I would in Entity View. But if I wanted to actually go into Entity View, I can just click on More and go into Entity View that way. And so now I'm viewing the entity. I can see the actual artifact here. And if there were any parents or children associated with it, I would see it there. I didn't relate it that way. So we're just looking at this, and I'm basically looking at the requirements factors here of what makes a good requirement and or why this is not a good requirement. Basically, is it clear? The quality checker said no, maybe the requirement may be too short. Is it complete? The requirement says no, requirement contains more than one sentence. So there's suggestions here that actually help you in writing a good requirement. So that's that'll probably be addressed in some of the advanced sections of Innoslate or the intermediate sections. So I'll just touch on that these are just guidelines on how to make a better requirement. They can always be changed to increase your score. So if I just change that to yes, there it is. Over here, if I wanted to add children to that, just click on add and it shows me basically all of the things associated with this. I could add in this is a child, and now it's listed here. I can view the attributes of that, multiplicity, decomposed by. We're not going to go that far into it, but that's kind of the basic idea of adding a relationship with an entity view. So I can always go back to requirements view if I wanted to and just take a look at the actual requirements view, and I could add labels to the requirements if I wanted to. I can view only the statements. If there are statements listed in this, I can view only requirements. I can actually auto number. So if I select on this, well, we'll go back to this. So if I wanted to auto number, I can do that as well, and I can do it from where it starts, and then hit run, and it'll auto number it based on the number that I give it to start with. I can download a report here if I wanted to, a basic document output. You can do tabular, RSMs, RTMs, RVMs, or requirements verification trace matrix. I can do it in docx, or I can do it in HTML format. Either way. So those are little tidbits that you can do here, but as far as requirements view, it's very helpful, very useful. A lot of the things that you can do in entity view can be done here for requirements, but this is a very useful view of requirements and a very powerful way to do requirements analysis inside of Innoslate. So basically what we're going to do here is we're just going to take a look at the database. And you can see database view here. You can see this is the artifact, and it tells me the class that's over here. And I can just look at this, and there's not much to do within database view except add new entities, or you can download a report if you wanted to of the actual database. So I can do a CSV file output if I wanted to. So database view is just a great way to look at what's been modified, look at what's in your database, and you can also delete entities from here. Do a mass delete if you wanted to. But I can sort by modified by, and I can see what was last touched in the database. So here it was E2.3. So a good way to sort it. If I wanted to, as I'm looking at this, I can start adding new entities. So if I wanted to add a new requirement, again, I just start here and I add name. So I'm just going to say requirement just for the heck of it. Number, we're going to give it E2.2.1, and this shall be my first requirement. And then, let's see. Just like that, it's brought into the database. Very easy. And I can go to the entity view and I can start creating relationships, and I can start disseminating what kind of quality score it's going to have. So it's very powerful, very useful entity view as well. I can create more relationships as I need to by using program management. Relationships, these are kind of the popular relationships that are populated into the program management tab. These are the most popular relationships that tend to be with this class. And if you don't see the relationship you want here, you can click on all, and that brings you to the all relationships, or all of the relationships that are within the database here. So you should be able to see any relationship that you want, and this is all based off of the LML language. So we've kind of populated this for you. There's something still that you haven't found there. I told you I was going to talk about how you can extend the schema, and we have it right here. It's called the Schema Editor. Now, LML is an open standard language. It's based off of our major list of classes here, but you can always add a new class. You can't take away these classes, but you can hide them. So if you click on action, you can actually, excuse me, you can actually hide it if you want to, and you can take away the actual actions that are in the database by hiding them, but we don't want to hide that. So you can also add in properties to this. You can add in certain relationships that are there. So such as one that I just saw, fetches a characteristic. And it also gives you the inverse over here. So there's a lot of interesting relationships that you could actually populate into the database that are not exactly listed in the ones that we give you, but this is a good list of the actual relationships you could use to start creating traceability and relating your relations to within the tool to other entities and actually getting your project looking very, very nice. So go ahead and save that out, and then we'll go back to database. Now, these are not necessarily things that I actually am going to use to create a diagram, although you can do that, especially if you're creating traceability. One of the things you could actually do with this is if you click on an entity, you can actually go into the diagram and you can start looking at your traceability with these. So this will bring you to our fantastic spider diagram, and the spider diagram should show you the relationships between the actual entity that I chose, which was this one, and how it relates to other entities within the database itself. So as you're looking at this, you can see that it's decomposed by, as it labels here, it's decomposed by these specific entities. And it also is a source of the artifact that I brought in. So you can see that there. So it's a great way to identify traceability. It's a great way to see how your entities actually relate to other entities, and actually if it's verifying correctly. So it's a great way to see the traceability, and this can go to multiple levels. This doesn't just stay at the one or two current levels. This can go pretty deep into levels of decomposition to show relationships and traceability through that. You can also download the picture of this. We can download a PNG. You can export it to a docx. You can also bring it into a HTML format, or you can bring it into a vector graphic, and this is good for tools like Visio. So many different ways to get this picture out without having to export the entire database. If you just wanted to show this picture to a colleague and start chatting, like I wanted to chat here, could easily do that if I wanted, if someone was online, but I think I'd have to share the project first in order to do that. And go over here and I click share, and then I just enter the person's email, give them permissions, and hit share, and that should send them an email that says that they've had a project shared with them, and they just have to click on the link in the email, and that allows them access to the project. If I wanted to manage my projects, I can go over here to manage projects, and now I can look at a list of my existing projects. This is going to show me all of my projects, which I have 71 of. I do have 38 that are archived, I do have 62 that are owned by me, and I do have 9 that are shared with me. I can separate these by each tab, and as I'm separating those, the blue means that it's been archived, and the white means that it's available to me in my project list. So as I'm looking at those, that's an easy way to be able to manage my projects. And I can always start a new project from here as well. So we're going to just go back. And as this loads, we're actually going to go into the action diagram, and we're just going to kind of start creating the action diagram as part of one of the blogs that was written on the website, how to drag and drop. So what I'm going to do is, and I usually don't do this based on, we don't like deleting any data, but I'm going to delete those just because I want to have a kind of a clean database here as I'm bringing in actions. Okay, there's the end of that, so we'll delete those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new action, and I'm just going to call it, since it's something that I know about, wildfire scenario. So we'll save that. Now I'm going to bring that up, the entity view again. I'm going to go to diagrams, and I'm going to go into action diagram. And this is where I'm actually going to start using the drag and drop feature and being able to work in this view alone, so I can actually start building in my database this way. This is if I wanted to start fresh and new instead of bringing in an actual any of my data. All right, give me 1 second here. There we go. So there's the action diagram, and I do apologize. It usually doesn't take this slow. Innoslate is a lot faster than this. So anyway, we'll move on. So basically, if I want to start an action diagram, I'm just going to start pulling from the constructs over here, and I can just start building as I drop them onto the canvas here. So as I do that, basically, I have 2 tabs up here. One says new, one says existing. As I start building the database, I can then start using the existing tab to add in more entities onto this, so I don't actually have to type them in every single time. But doing this is just as easy, and now it's there. The action's been created in the database, and I can just start with, you know, the name. Lookout reports smoke, and I can give it a number, and I can do a description. It's going to take a little time. Duration, I can always change that here. We'll talk minutes, and it usually takes about a minute for them to report it in. So we'll just go with that. I'm going to add another one here, drop it onto the diagram. Again, it's just that easy. It's drag and drop. Your fingers get a workout. That's about it. So here it's going to be radios into dispatch. Okay, again, easy as that. So bring another one over here. Dispatch notifies FMO. FMO stands for the Fire Management Officer, so acronyms are very big. Oh, I forgot to add that in, so I'm just going to put the number over here, and then we'll add another number over here. So you can see it's very simple, very easily done. Radios into dispatch. Doesn't take an hour to do that. That should take 2 minutes. Dispatch notifies the FMO. That should take a matter of 5 minutes. And this all the duration values help with the simulation. It gives me an idea of how long this process will take. as I look at this process and the system of how the process is supposed to go, and as I start building this process, it'll help me understand where the gaps are in time or where the gaps are in resources, and how I can actually allocate those and make it a better system to actually process through here. So again, so I can bring in again dispatch notifies the FMO. FMO has two options, and we're going to bring that in here. Actually, that's the wrong one that I want to do. So a good way to show that is that I can click on this here to show me to select the entire parallel branch, remove that from the diagram. So I can do this if I wanted to. So we'll change this to scout fire, and yes or no. So if he or she decides that they want to scout the fire before they allocate resources, if he says yes, then he's going to ideally it's either going to travel to location. And as you can see, this becomes very easy. I'm not changing any views to get into this. I'm completely doing this in entity view, or I'm sorry, in diagram view. So I'm able to push through this and just create my, what I want to see here in a modeling view, and be able to drag and drop very easily with no problems of having to go back and redo anything. If I wanted to delete this one out of the diagram, I can just do that. If I actually want to delete this out of the entire database, I can do it from here, or I can just remove from the diagram, which is exactly what I did before. So I can delete from the database if I wanted to, but we're not going to do that. So if I did want to add, let's say, another branch to this, so we're going to select the main route, and I can just add another branch, and it gives me the option here. I can change that option if I wanted to. I can reset the label, I can hide it. So there's many features to the actual action diagram, but it's very helpful being able to drag and drop. It allows me to create models quickly, and I can actually do this in real time with other people, being able to collaborate and being able to view this as we go along. So it's a very helpful diagram and feature of Innoslate that is pretty much is exclusive to Innoslate, that you can actually drag and drop. Now, there's certain things that I want to add in here too. If I wanted to add a resource, I can do it here, just add the resource. And so look out, and then I just want to allocate it. So I take one of the green circles and basically drag it over. Does it consume it or does it seize it? So it obviously is going to consume it here, because the lookout is being consumed by this to report the smoke. And then, again, that easy. So if I want to do an input-output, just as a hypothetical here, I can make it either a trigger, which means the input-output would stay green, or I can make it optional, which means it'll stay gray. And that all helps with the decisions the simulation will make. So that's kind of the basis of creating a diagram here, and you can do this with any of the diagrams in Innoslate. So if you wanted to actually go do that. So based on the classes, you can create certain diagrams within the database itself. So as we're looking at the database here, if I wanted to go to another action and actually start working in that, I could. If I wanted to create an asset diagram, here's my lookout, and now I can go into the diagrams view or diagrams dropdown, and I can create the asset diagram. I can see how the lookout would be traced to other assets, or would be traced to different actions based on the spider diagram if I wanted to. We have SysML diagrams in here, and we also have other general diagrams, so a hierarchy chart. So if there wasn't, if I wanted to label out the organization, I can do that. If I wanted to go into a document diagram or something of that nature, I can go into the tree diagram, so I can maybe look at wildfire policy or United States Forest Service policy on releasing resources to fight a fire, things like that. So very helpful in being able to navigate through the entity view here, but also navigating into diagrams from that aspect. So again, so we've covered the requirements view, we've covered database, and we've covered the action diagrams. Again, the other diagrams will be explained a little bit later in some of the intermediate series. I did go over some of the Schema Editor and how you can do that. You can do that you can create new labels, you can create new relationships, you can create new entities within that aren't listed here, as far as new classes that aren't listed here, so that to be able to make your project a little more in-depth and full, the schema itself is just very helpful to keep things simple, but also allows you to make it a little more extendable if you need to. One of the big features of Innoslate is our search capability. If you notice, basically if I type in anything here, so we'll just type in the lookout, it'll bring up anything that has the lookout listed within it. So I can click on one of these if it's something that I'm looking for, and there it brings me to entity view, and I can show that as well. If I wanted to add a picture to this, so I could show maybe what the lookout's location might be. Ideally, it's just a shack sitting on top of a very tall hill to be able to overlook the forest. I can do that if I wanted to as well. So I would be just looking for certain pictures to do that with, and I can upload those as well. I can also take a picture from a file and drag it into here, and it should upload that as well. Other parts of the actual menu up here, we do have documentation that will lead you to Innoslate. We have the webinars like the one today that will be linked up here. If you want to view the pricing of Innoslate and the different versions of the pricing, it's listed up there as well. If you wanted to contact us, we have our numbers listed here. That link will take you to it. We have a DODAF dashboard. I can show you that quickly. So here's our DODAF dashboard. If I wanted to create an AV1, you can start doing that. And we have all of the DODAF products integrated into the tool. And you can start building basically throughout the tabs here listed on the dashboard. So it's very useful for DODAF, the DODAF 2.02. And again, we can do a ConOps document, we can do a bunch of documents, we can do project plans, IV&V plans, and if there's something that you don't see and you actually really need it as a customer, I most likely sometimes build it for you or actually do it for you if it's a request that tends to be popular. But we're fully able to try and meet our customers' needs within reason, and we certainly try to give you the best response possible and able to identify if it's actual something that would be worthwhile. But we're still open to any ideas, any feedback, anything you want to see, and so that's where the feedback portion of the dashboard comes in. So basically, here's and feedback is listed on on any of our dashboards, so you can see that here. So as I'm looking at this, I think I covered most of what I needed to cover. I will open this up for question and answers.
Thanks, Mike. We've already received several questions. If you haven't done so, please send your questions through the panel on the right. Mike will answer as many questions as he can before our time is up. If he is unsure about an answer to a question, Mike will email you after the webinar. Our first question we have today is the MS Word Import Analyzer limited to the 3 attributes as shown in the demo, or did it determine the most appropriate?
I think what you're talking about is, oh, I'm sorry. What I think you're talking about is when I brought in a requirements view and it had the rationale quality score and the I forget the last one, but those are completely changeable. You can, on the settings view, there's actually a wrench up there. You can actually change that that setting, and it'll bring you right into that. Let me bring you into that here. So if you go up to this wrench up here, it'll actually show you. You can go to the settings, and it can you can change around or add more of these columns to the actual view. Of course, it's loading all the requirements here. But that's how you would do that. If these are not set in stone, you can change the order, you can change which ones you want to see. So it's easily done by just clicking on the wrench in requirements view and hitting settings, and that'll be shown.
Our next question is the baseline feature on a per doc or per requirements basis?
Per doc or per requirements? Okay, so basically what it is the baselining feature itself, when you get a set of requirements that you are happy with and that you want to make as your foundation, you want to baseline those as well. So as you look here, there's been plenty of different requirements here, and if I wanted to basically do this, so if I want to baseline it, that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Basically, this is the set of requirements that I want. So if that's the set of requirements that I want to have my foundation for my project to start with, then I'll baseline it, and again, just create a new baseline name. So DODI 2006, and now it's creating the baseline. And as it creates the baseline, the color on the left went from kind of the yellow-orange to it'll change to a blue, and I can start from there. So it's based off of your requirements and how you've set them up, and the document will be listed up in the drop-down up here.
Our next question is, does the tool AutoNumber like IBM doors?
I'm not sure how IBM doors actually auto-numbers, but what it'll do is it'll take your starting number and it'll identify parent-child based on the relationships in here, and it'll number it accordingly. So if you start with 1.0, so let's just say it'll number it almost to this exact way. If I start it with E2 dot, it'll basically put it as E2.1, etc., all the way down.
Is there a way to search the database by a custom label?
Yes, actually. So if we go over to the database view, as we scroll down, there's labels listed here, and if we select, we can actually look at the labels here. First of all, these are all labels that have been brought in or created by Innoslate as the document was brought in, based on the version that it was listed as. So any other label that we have will be listed down here as a custom label. You can certainly search for that label as well. And if I wanted to create a new label, just have to go into Interview, click on New Label, and I can create the new label here. It'll show up in the list that I just showed you, and you can search for that label. For any other ones that you've created for these entities, you can search for that label.
How do you connect requirements to actions?
Good question. Okay, so requirements to actions, again, you can, this is saying that your database is populated. So you can go into the entity view, and we'll just select any requirement here. So being that I don't see any of my relationships that I want here, I can just look at any that are here and see if there's any that relate to an action, as the tool will help me with that. I can see trace to, I can see verify by. So those two could actually be done by an action, but might not necessarily be the most easiest answer for that. But if you don't find your relationship here, you can always go to the actual Schema Editor and create the relationship you want. But you can also go here and search for, so let's just say I want to find the action, excuse me, and basically I can look for specific ones here, so satisfies requirement. So I can select that, and I can add that relationship if I wanted to, and that's the way that I would do it. There might be other ways, but that's the way that I would do it.
Our next question is, if you remove an item, is there an undo capability?
There is not an undo capability. Innoslate pretty much, as a failsafe, saves everything that's done. One of the things that you could do, really there's no undo mechanism. It's basically, if you delete something from the database, it's pretty much gone. Unless you've saved, unless you've actually saved the version of that entity to a specific time, you might be able to use the version history. But as far as I know, that once you delete it from the database, it's gone. You can, with the action diagram itself, if you remove it from the diagram, it's not gone from the database. But if you actually remove it from the database, it's gone.
Our next question is, for the various plans, is the entity count a limit per project inside of Innoslate? So if I have 5 projects using the basic plan, I could have 5 times 1,000 entities.
That's correct. So the basic plans for Innoslate, they're limited to 1,000 entities per project as the basic plan. The standard plan is 5,000 entities per project. There's no limit on the projects, but there's just a limit on the entities in certain aspects of the tool that are not available. So yes, you could have 5 projects and each have 1,000 entities inside the project.
Our next question is, how does Innoslate handle the proprietary nature of corporate projects? Is there a package that can be bought and installed inside a corporate network? Most of our programs are at a minimum FOUO.
Okay, so if your programs are at an FOUO, you don't want to be on the cloud, even though our cloud network, our cloud provider is actually pretty darn secure. Ideally, but we do have Innoslate Enterprise version, which allows you to install Innoslate on your own server using Microsoft SQL database as your backend database for Innoslate, and that basically allows Innoslate to scale to very large projects, upwards of the millions of entities inside of a project. So that can be stored on your servers, and it's behind your firewall, so you're able to basically virtually not have your data out there and still have it within Innoslate in your company.
Our next question is, can you better explain the features of I/O entities?
So the I/O entities are inputs and outputs. Basically, it's kind of, as you're looking at an action diagram, or so pretty much an action diagram, what you're going to be looking at is an input-output is basically what gets put into the system and what comes out of it. So as an action happens, what's an input, what's an output. So as we look at the database here, we'll go to, I'll show you the entity view for these, and you'll see it on the sidebar over here for the input-output. All right, well, I didn't want to do that. So if we look at input output, since I don't have any in there, we'll go to here. Again, input outputs, you can have a name, you can have a number with it, you can have a specific description. You can certainly have a size with it as far as you know, a number or you know, how you want this to deal with it. So we can look at a triangular formulation, we can look at binomial, so you can also have a value with it. Basically, this could mean that, you know, it happens one time, or it's just one output, one input, and you can label the units here. And if you don't really know what something means, we always have the helpful pop-ups that scroll over something. So as you see here, there's size. As you come down here, there's units. So, and it gives you the definition of what this truly means, so you can better identify your information that you want to put in here. So in this case, units represent this inputs, outputs, units-based measure used to measure the size, such as a gigabyte or tokens. So it could be data, it could be, you know, documents, could be you know, money, it could be anything like that. So as you're looking at your value, that's kind of what's going to kind of give you the better description of what your input output is going to help you with in your action diagrams.
Our next question is, are LML, UML, and SysML compatible? In other words, can Innoslate convert from LML to UML or SysML?
Excuse me. Innoslate uses LML as its base language, and basically it was developed for that reason, to work within and make things simpler. We do have SysML capabilities as far as diagrams go, mainly because, as you, well, that doesn't show it, but if you go to an action, so basically with UML and SysML, there are, SysML and UML tend to be a lot more complex, and there's a lot of different relationships and attributes that go along with these, but some of the same aspects tend to rely on them or rely on each other. So like an activity in SysML is like an action in LML. So in some sense they're relatable, but they don't necessarily build off of each other in Innoslate. But there's a better description of it on lifecyclemodeling.org if you wanted to read more about it.
Our next question is, does Innoslate have a discrete event simulation and or Monte Carlo simulation?
Innoslate actually has both. It does have the Monte Carlo simulator, and let me see if I can get you. Innoslate has both. So Innoslate has the discrete event simulator, which actually is basically meant for a one-time simulation, just to make sure that there's you know, that your model works well, and that there's no, you can identify where the errors are within your model. It can also identify where gaps are. We do have the Monte Carlo simulation that allows for multiple running of the model, so that way you can look at resources and where your gaps are in the resources. You can look at your costs. You can look at, and it gives you a good statistical average of, you know, within standard deviations of where your data will fall as to cost, time, or duration, resources used, and other variable factors that play into a simulation that, or a project, or you know, a program that might actually be helpful in your in determining where your gaps are and how you can make things a little more efficient. So if we're looking at something like this, so if we're looking at an action diagram, if this decides to go to it. If you're looking at an action diagram, there'll be a blue button up top that specifically it says simulate on it. There's a drop down next to it that will ask if you want to do Monte Carlo, or it will ask if you want to do a discrete event. And you can select either. The discrete event that does allow for you to have automated decisions, or you can prompt your own decisions. And so as you're looking at that, at the action diagram here, here's the simulate button, and you can basically have it here. So it's either discrete event or Monte Carlo. In this case, we can elect a discrete event, and the output is put as a Gantt chart, and you can list out a table which shows you a sequence of events, why it made a decision, and how long it took, and then the charts are going to be your actual resources. So if we wanted to actually do this, start automated decisions as the default, but if you want to prompt your decisions, you can always select the drop down from the arrow here, and that'll get you going on that. Up here on the right hand side, you'll see it says 0 years, etc. So basically my simulation was complete, and it shows you the steps and how long it took. You can click on any one of these to go to that entity, and so you can see the entire actual system took 16 hours, providing a status took 3, total time was 1 day, 2 hours, etc. If I wanted to look at the decisions made, I can just go to the actual chart here, or the table, and if I want to look at some of the data and chart values, I can actually click on the chart, and that'll sort it into what I want, and then all my data is listed here based on percentages. So Monte Carlo kind of shows you the same type of histograms, but it gives you a more detailed aspect with certain statistical variations based on time duration, cost, and things like that, and it shows you that over time, and it gives you the ability to see where your gaps are. So let me see if I can actually bring up a Monte Carlo simulation. Any simulation within the tool itself will be saved as an artifact. That way you don't lose the actual data that was run. So there's a Monte Carlo. And if anytime it's saved like this and I want to view the simulation, I can just click on the simulation result, and here's what the Monte Carlo looks like. So you can see the master FireSat function takes 1 day, 2 hours as an average. You can see how long each one of these will take, as this left side here shows you the actual the majority of what took up the most time. So in this case, maintaining FireSat system took 16 hours. Over here, again, you can see the total simulation duration, 1 day, 2 hours. I can select costs and see if there was any cost, but none of this data has been entered in this one. And I can see what resources were used, if there were any within the system itself, but no resources have been listed here. So again, it's very useful. There was a blog published on on Innoslate.com where you can check out under support under the summer series, and it shows you some of the outputs of a Monte Carlo simulator, and you'll be able to see what it looks like and how useful it is.
Our next question is, when you invite other people to your project, can all of the users edit collaboratively or one participant at a time?
So when you have a bunch of users on a project like I do here, you can change their permissions, but you can also, so if you want, you can make someone an owner, which means they can edit with you in a collaborative situation, and then ideally it comes down to the timestamp. Whoever saves first is which data is going to be saved. And so ideally that's pretty much how it's going to go. We do have other options available to do this. This is partially why we invented the group chat. So anyone that I've got this shared with, I can always just go up to the chat, see who's online. So I can see that Stephen Dam is online, so if I wanted to chat with him and collaborate on this, I can do that as well, and we can look at the model together. If I wanted to not change anything and just have someone view it, I can actually add a comment down here, and then that person can be notified that a comment was added within the database, and they'll be able to look at it and see what the comment was. I can also run a comment report and see if any comments were made that I need to look at. So those are fairly optional ways of being able to work with colleagues and be able to collaborate in real time in order to achieve the goal of basically being able to edit a system in real time and not having to export, import, review, change, make comments, then export and send it, import. That takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So we've brought in a lot of different ways to be able to communicate without having to spend a lot of time outside of the tool itself.
We have time for one more question. Our last question is, can you show how Innoslate tracks changes to a requirement?
Sure. So if we go to Requirements View, and I don't have any requirements here. Well, I'll bring up the other one here just to get it going. So within Requirements View, what we're going to look at here in order to track requirements and the changes to them, one way to do that is to actually baseline requirements, and then as requirements change, you can do for one, the actual the color, as you're viewing it in Requirements View, the colors will change to show changes of what's been changed within requirements from blue to orange. So that'll help as far as a visual aspect. The other aspect is that you can go into the actual entity itself, and there is a version control or history of the entity, and you can see which entities have been changed. And and if you want to revert back, you can always revert back to it. I was going to show that here. And yeah, of course. Okay. I do apologize for the speed. This is my computer. It's not Innoslate itself. Oh. Okay. All right, so we're just going to go to All right, so we're just going to go to requirement, and we're going to look at the entity, and I'll show you how this is. So under the history here, under the entity, You can look at the history view and you can see how many times it's been changed. So you can actually track the changes here. If you click on the version, you can see that actually there are no changes made. But if I wanted to revert to that version, don't need to. Again, no changes were made here, but something happened to where it was either saved or where it was done. Something was done, whether baselined or not. So again, I can just basically do that here. I can see the relationship that's been added to this, and there were no changes to the attributes, but the relationship was changed, and I added decomposed by, or it decomposes this relationship or this entity. And so if I wanted to revert to that version, I just click on that, and that'll bring it back to that version. But maybe I'm looking for a different version here, and this was sourced by, and there's a unique identifier there, labels that were added, specific label here. If I wanted to revert to that version, I could do that as well. So I could actually track the changes in here to this requirement just as things were done. So if anything was done to the attributes or the relationship or anything as far as the numbering, so the numbering was changed in here, the relationship was added here, which was sourced by. So this is the easiest way to track what changes have been done, and you can always run a report to identify these types of changes as well to get a bulk version. Okay.
Thanks, Mike. That's all the questions that we have time for today. We would like to thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. As a reminder, we will be following up with you very soon to send you a link to the recording and the presentation slide deck. Join us next time for How to Use Innoslate for Intermediate Users, August 6th. I'll post a link to register in the chat box. You can register through this link, or be sure to keep an eye out for your email invitation. We also encourage you to visit our website and our blog, as well as connect with us on social media. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you again for your attendance, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar, August 6th. Please enjoy the rest of your day.